In the summer of 2011, a Swedish treasure hunting team scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea picked up something on sonar that looked nothing like the flat, sediment-covered seabed surrounding it. A circular structure, roughly 60 meters across, sitting on a raised platform with straight edges and a shape that, to a lot of people looking at the grainy sonar image online, immediately called to mind a certain fictional spaceship buried in ice. It became known as the Baltic Sea Anomaly, and for over a decade, it's been one of the most argued over underwater mysteries on the internet. Recently, claims have been circulating that scientists have finally conclusively solved it. Here's the honest version of where that story actually stands, because it's more layered than a simple yes or no. And the real explanation and the real unresolved pieces are both worth knowing. Stick around, because there's also a genuinely wild, confirmed discovery from this exact region that gets far less attention than it deserves. And if you like getting the real story instead of the recycled internet version, subscribe now. First, the discovery itself. The Ocean X team, led by Peter Lindbergh and Dennis Osberg, found the object while conducting a routine sonar sweep of the Baltic seabed, searching for old shipwrecks. Something the team had spent years doing professionally before this. Find took over their careers. The sonar image showed a roughly circular formation with what looked like straight lines and right-angled features across its surface, along with a long tail-like extension trailing off one side, sitting on the seafloor at a depth of around 87 to 90 meters. In the years since, the team has released fragmented footage and photographs from follow-up dives, describing a temperature drop detected just above the object's surface, patches of what they characterized as burnt or scorched material on nearby rock fragments, and, according to some crew accounts, repeated equipment malfunctions whenever electronic gear was operated in close proximity to the site, claims that have never been independently verified through published, peer-reviewed data. That combination, an oddly geometric shape, temperature, anomalies, and equipment problems, is exactly what turned this from a regional curiosity into a full-blown internet phenomenon, complete with UFO crash theories, lost Atlantis speculation, and no shortage of tabloid coverage over the following decade. Now here's the mainstream scientific explanation, and it's a genuinely well-supported one. The Baltic Sea itself is geologically young, having formed roughly 8,000 to 10,000 years ago as glaciers from the last ice age retreated across northern Europe. As those glaciers moved, they picked up enormous quantities of rock and debris, and as they melted, they deposited that material across the newly forming seabed in often strange, irregular shapes known as glacial erratics and moraine formations. Geologists who reviewed the earliest images concluded the anomaly was most likely exactly this, a large glacial deposit, its apparent geometric edges a product of natural sediment layering, and erosion rather than deliberate construction. The dark, dense rock samples Ocean X actually managed to recover from the site, were identified as ordinary basalt and granite, common materials for this kind of glacial deposit, and entirely unremarkable in composition. That explanation got significantly stronger in 2024, when researcher Jens Feldens led a study using high-resolution multi-beam echo sounder bathymetry, essentially a much more advanced and precise form of sonar mapping than what Ocean X had access to back in 2011, to survey a wide stretch of the Baltic seabed in this same general region. The results confirmed that the seafloor here is genuinely littered with naturally occurring ridges, moraine deposits, and glacially carved formations that can produce sonar readings looking deceptively artificial and geometric, especially to lower resolution equipment or an untrained eye. For most working geologists, that study effectively closed the case, placing the anomaly inside a well-documented broader pattern of known glacial seabed activity across the region, rather than treating it as a singular, unexplainable object. So is that the end of the story? For the mainstream geological community, largely, yes. But it's worth being honest that not everyone involved considers the matter fully closed, and the reasons why are worth understanding rather than dismissing outright. Independent researchers, including underwater archaeologist Andreas Olsson, have pointed out that some recovered material appeared, in his assessment, cut or molded, rather than naturally fractured. An observation that's never been backed by a formal peer-reviewed materials analysis, but hasn't been definitively disproven either, since no complete core sample from the structure's main body has ever actually been extracted and independently tested. More recently, a 2025 expedition brought in outside partners including underwater drone specialists from CQR Robotics, a French group called Sigma 2 that studies unexplained aerial phenomena using scientific methodology, and researchers from Stockholm University, including astronomer Beatrice Villaruel, known for her work searching for anomalies in historical astronomical survey data. Their stated reasoning for continuing the investigation centers less on romantic UFO speculation and more on a specific practical gap in the existing case. Full, comprehensive, high-resolution data from the site has still never been fully collected and published, and the original claims of repeated equipment. Failure near the object, if genuinely verifiable, would represent a real anomaly worth documenting properly rather than dismissing without direct evidence. That's a fair, genuinely scientific position to hold. And it's very different from claiming the site is obviously artificial or otherworldly. The honest state of affairs is that the leading, best supported explanation is natural glacial geology, strongly reinforced by the 2024 mapping study, while a small number of specific claims, the burnt organic residue on one basalt fragment, the equipment malfunction reports, and the question of whether any recovered material shows genuine tool marks, remain unresolved simply because nobody has yet published a complete, independently verified dataset addressing them directly. Here's the part of this story that deserves a lot more attention than it usually gets, because it's not speculation, it's a confirmed, published archaeological discovery from this same general stretch of the Baltic Sea, and it's honestly more impressive than anything the sonar anomaly has produced. In 2024, archaeologists announced the discovery of what's being called the Blinkerwall, a genuine confirmed man-made stone structure submerged in the Bay of Mecklenburg in the western Baltic Sea, roughly 21 meters underwater. It consists of nearly 1,500 individual stones, arranged deliberately in a line stretching almost a kilometer long, believed to have been constructed by Stone Age hunter-gatherer communities approximately 11,000 years ago, likely used as a driving structure to funnel migrating reindeer herds into a bottleneck. For hunting, before rising sea levels eventually submerged the entire structure as the region flooded at the end of the last ice age. This is currently considered one of the oldest known man-made megastructures in Europe. And unlike the sonar anomaly, it's been formally surveyed, documented, and published through legitimate peer-reviewed archaeological research. That contrast is genuinely worth sitting with. One story, the sonar anomaly, generates massive online attention built primarily on a decade-old grainy sonar image, fragmented footage, and claims that have never been fully documented through rigorous published science. The other story, an actual 11,000-year-old megastructure sitting in the same sea, built by real Ice Age hunter-gatherers, backed by full peer-reviewed publication and legitimate underwater archaeology, gets a fraction of the attention despite being unambiguously real, and honestly, a far more remarkable achievement by ancient humans than a natural rock formation could ever be. So, where does that leave the actual question in this video's title? Have scientists solved the Baltic Sea anomaly? The best supported, most rigorously tested answer, backed by real 2024 mapping data, is that it's very likely a natural glacial deposit, consistent with dozens of similar formations, now documented across the same stretch of seabed. That's not a dramatic, headline-friendly conclusion, but it is the one with actual published science behind it. What hasn't happened is a complete, independently verified core sample analysis of the object itself, which means a handful of specific claims, burnt residue, equipment interference, apparent tool marks, remain technically open questions, even if the weight of available evidence leans heavily toward an unglamorous, entirely natural explanation. Maybe the most interesting lesson in this whole story isn't really about the anomaly at all. It's about how a single viral sonar image with an incomplete dataset can dominate over a decade of public fascination, while a fully confirmed, genuinely extraordinary piece of real ancient history sitting in that exact same sea quietly gets a fraction of the attention it deserves. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the Baltic Sea can hide a genuine 11,000-year-old megastructure that took archaeologists this long to properly document, what do you think is still sitting undiscovered on the floor of the world's oceans, in places nobody's pointed a high-resolution sonar array at yet? Or drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories that separate real, published science from viral speculation, subscribe now, because there's plenty more of this coming.